who came up with this phrase Ultra-MAGA? Why the need to kick it up a notch? Well, MAGA wasn't enough. I mean, why now use this phrase?
I will tell you is the president's phrase, and the president made those comments himself just last week, as you know. And so to him, adding a little ultra to it, give it a little extra pop. Go ahead.
So then who is an Ultra-MAGA Republican?
I would say people who support that portion of the Republican agenda.
So Rob Portman, Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, would they be Ultra-MAGA Republicans?
They can all make their own choices, Ed, and we can let others evaluate that.
Can you give us a little more specifics about any new policies the administration might be considering to address high gas prices?
There are a lot of ideas in Congress about steps that can be taken to lower gas prices, even temporarily, or provide some relief to Americans. So we're in a constant discussion about that. He does continue to view the challenge as one being about ensuring there's supply in the marketplace. And obviously he's taken the steps he took with the historic release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We'll continue to talk with.
I was hoping to clarify something President Biden said today on inflation. He said his policies helped rather than hurt on inflation.
Take any responsibility for your policies?
I think our policies help, not hurt.
Does the president believe that his COVID relief package played any role in the increase in inflation last year?
The main drivers of inflation.
Just to make sure, like, what he's saying is the pandemic is distinct from the spending in response to the pandemic, and he does not believe the size of the spending mattered with regard to inflation.
Again, no, we have spoken to this in the past, Josh, as you know. The president made a decision that in order to address what was a
Department of Justice was very swift in responding to school board members who felt like they were being harassed and intimidated. Does the president feel that the demonstrations outside of, say, Justice Alito's home are those attempts to interfere or intimidate?
So I know that there's an outrage right now, I guess, about protests that have been peaceful to date, and we certainly continue to encourage that outside of judges' homes, and that's the president's position. But the silence is pretty deafening about all of the other intimidation that we've seen to a number of people.
This is a pending court case, though. That's where the federal law comes into place. This is a pending court case.
Inflation, is he concerned at all that widespread loan forgiveness would actually increase inflation, further exacerbated by pumping money into the economy?
I know some economists, and I don't have an official assessment from here, but I would say that Jared Bernstein, who is one of our economists, has spoken to this, and he's talked about more about the impact of pausing federal loan repayments and the fact that in his view, and you can quote him directly, would be something like 0.001%. But again, I don't have a projection here on specifically what the inflationary impact.
To denigrate him as illegitimate or worse is that there are people referring to his administration as the regime and talking about him as if he's a dictator. Is he bothered by that, or does he just see it as politics as usual these days?
I haven't heard that one as much, but I would say that you heard the president, Ed asked him earlier today about Senator Scott's comments about him. And, the president's response was he has a problem.
You called out Rick Scott a little while ago in your remarks. Earlier today, anticipating your remarks, the best thing, the most effective thing Joe Biden can do to solve the inflation crisis he created is resign. He's the problem.
Resign, that's a good idea.
The senator added later, Joe Biden is unwell, he's unfit for office, he's incoherent, incapacitated, and confused. These are his words. Offering him a chance to respond to that.
I think the man has a problem.
The president was also asked if he took responsibility for any of his policies related to inflation, not just gas prices, but inflation. When he took office, inflation was 2.5% year over year. It's now 8.5%. The invasion didn't happen until about 1 year into his term. So why doesn't the president take any responsibility?
I think the president said today that he's president and that we control all three, obviously Congress, the House and Senate as well.
Why do you believe so many Americans believe that your administration is not doing enough to combat inflation? And do you believe that you and your administration bear some measure of responsibility for the inflation that we're seeing across the country?
The first is we're in power. That's the first thing. And you justifiably right, we control all three branches of the government.
So today the president said that a majority of Republicans have signed on to Senator Scott's tax plan. That does not seem to be the case. Senator Scott said that today. Mitch McConnell had said that the party is not behind this. Are there any Republicans that you can think of or the president might be referencing that is currently behind this?
Do you count the chairman of the Republican committee as an important Republican?
He is the chairman of a committee, but if no other Republican...
It's actually a she, the chairman of the Republican Party.
There.
So Chairman Ronna McDaniel praised Senator Scott's proposal
as far as Senator Scott goes, he acknowledged today that a majority is not behind him. He says this is his individual plan for this.
Elon Musk today said that he would reverse the decision to have Twitter made to ban President Trump. Wondered if the White House has a reaction to that and how that would impact this White House's dealing with misinformation.
These platforms are not used for forums for disinformation. And we have seen a history of that, not just on Twitter, but also on Facebook. The president believes there's more that needs to be done in reforming Section 230, and there's a lot of bipartisan interest in that. So this may be a reminder of the urgency of doing that.
Gas prices, despite the steps that the president has taken, despite tapping the strategic oil reserve, prices have hit a new high at $4.37 a gallon. How long should Americans be prepared to pay this much at the pump?
Well, I would say you heard the president say today and reiterate today that he is relentlessly focused on easing Putin's price hike at the pump. And that means taking as many steps as he can to continue to lower costs for Americans. Now, the steps that he can take, and he has taken, of course, include a historic release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, price gouging customers at the pump.
The steps taken so far haven't been able to bring down prices. Can Americans be confident that some of the steps that you're outlining now will be able to have an effect, or are prices just going to stay this way? Is Putin's price hike going to stay until Putin's war is over?
Well, we certainly won't accept that. But what I think is important to note is the oil market is global, and what the president can do and will continue to do is ensure he's doing everything in his power to...
So the president said today that inflation is his top domestic priority. Has that replaced climate change then for this administration as the top priority?
Well, I would say first that inflation and the rising costs for people across the country has long been the top issue for in every poll we've seen, and certainly has been the #1 issue for the president for some time. When he came into office, he said that his agenda was going to focus on 4 major priorities. That includes addressing the climate crisis.
Similar theme, Senator Collins called the police over the weekend after someone wrote a non-threatening abortion rights message in sidewalk chalk in front of her house in Maine. I was just curious sort of what you made of that, of her response.
I don't have any specific comment on her response other than to say that even as passions are high,
Consider sidewalk chalk vandalism.
This is not, and you heard the president say this today, is not whether inflation is or isn't an issue. We all agree it's an issue. What our plan is and what the president's plan is to address costs and bring down costs is what he outlined this morning. It's a multi-step plan. What are we seeing on the other side? We're seeing the plan proposed by Chairman Scott, which would instead raise costs on the American people. We've also heard Chairman Powell, Secretary Yellen, and others convey.
Chairman Powell did say that partly what the Fed did, as well as spending from Congress, is the reason that we're in this high inflation environment.
He also talked about energy price, the invasion and the impact on energy prices, did he not? Well, that seems like an important part of context, doesn't it?
But it wasn't until 1 year into the presidency that the invasion happened.
And you're asking me about recent inflationary data. Let me do Lynn Sweet because I have a soft spot for her. Lynn Sweet, go ahead. Lynn Sweet, let's hear it. Lynn Sweet is going to ask a question.
Thank you, and this relates to his visit to Kankakee. And
Lynn, thank you. I should have phoned a friend on the pronunciation. I practiced it. I didn't get it right. I should have seen you here. Go ahead.
Just as others have, that the language that you used today in in recent days on calling this Putin's price hike and Ultra-MAGA. I'm curious, when you go to the IBEW to talk about supporting the new jobs infrastructure, energy issues, and your record on those issues, is this effective language to use in that kind of audience? Because when you go to Kankakee, it's really your event, and it's clear. You don't have to worry about an audience reacting one way or the other. Could you speak to that?
Well, I think when he's visiting a family farm in Kankakee. How did I do there? Okay. And so when he's there, he's really going to talk about the role of American farmers. And you will all continue to hear him talk more about his concern about ultra-MAGA Republicans and their agenda. And of course, this is not the last you've heard from us about Chairman Scott's tax plan. That will raise taxes. Okay.